Oh, hey everybody, it's Pete coming at you from Pete's Upright Bass Shop. Beautiful Friday morning, and it's going to get busy, so I figured I would make a quick video, talk to you about something that I was thinking about last night at a gig, and talking to a customer of mine, and so I thought it was a perfect opportunity. I'm going to put these new Harmony end pins down. They're really nice. I got a couple different kinds to try. I've used them before, but damn, this brass one's gonna sound killer, I think. Anyway, last night I was up in Hood River playing this gig, and for starters, my action was a little low. But also, with that kind of playing, I was kind of moving around a little bit, and I noticed my hand was starting to get a little tendonitis flare up because I've been dealing with that. And sure, lo and behold, I grabbed the bass from the shop that had the most lacquer on the back of the neck. And I get a lot of customers coming in asking about that, if the paint can be removed, if they got some cheap bass and, you know, God forbid it's got paint on it. You know, you've seen those white basses or that black bass. Yeah, if anybody wants that thing, it's cheap. But yeah, all the paint or this lacquer, especially lacquer, it really starts to get, especially the nitrocellulose that they used to use back in the day, gets really sticky and it can almost actually roll off. But it gets really grabby and it can be problematic for shifting. So I've removed lots of varnish and lacquer from necks over the years. My very first bass, people ask me all the time, how'd you get started? Well, I made most of my mistakes on my first bass, and most of my mistakes on my own basses before I ever did anything for anybody else, but that's another story. So when I was in college, I wanted to sand my neck because I felt like it was too thick, and I felt like, oh, I've got small hands, wah, I need a thinner neck. That's an issue in itself, and I'm going to talk about that today, and that's the thickness between the back of the neck where your thumb is playing and riding and shifting up and down with your hand, and the front, the top of the fingerboard. That thickness right there I'm going to talk about. But the lacquer issue, when that gets removed, it's not like, you know, go at it with 180 grit or, 80 grit, or 120 grit. You maybe start with 180 if you're even going to use sandpaper to start with. So oftentimes you can strip that down, and then sometimes it's coarse steel wool, and then buff it out, and then oil it, and it plays like a dream. Sometimes you do have to get just a little more aggressive with sandpaper, and then if there's imperfections in the neck, sometimes you can clean those up without getting things too skinny. And that phrase right there, too skinny, is the issue I want to talk about now, because when somebody sands on their own neck, or God forbid somebody else's neck, and doesn't know what they're doing, first of all, they can make a bow in the back because they just start doing this and sanding the hell out of it, and then pretty soon it's got this hump issue going where it's not a straight line there. And I'm going to show you that. Hang on a second. So for the most part, you want virtually no daylight in there, from about there to about there. Now, if you do have daylight in there, that means it's bowed this way. Now, oftentimes you sand a neck too much, and the fingerboard's also been sanded a bunch over the course of 80 years or whatever on an old American Standard or a King or a K or something, and pretty soon it's getting skinny from both sides, and the fingerboard and the neck want to warp. So if you're out there shopping for a bass, and everybody's looking for their K bass for however much, and if you really don't know what you're looking for, you might get stuck. And I really hate to hear people say, oh, it seemed like a good deal, because there's usually issues. And so if you look down the neck, now this neck and this line is pretty damn straight. It's a little wonky just because it's old, but it's virtually straight, and the fingerboard's not affected by it. So this is a good candidate. Even though the neck was broken at the Achilles heel, that's what I call this. This is more like the middle of the foot. But this has been fixed for 20 years, and that just is what it is. Somebody down the road fixed this, looks like with epoxy, so that's what you're going to find with old K bases, is a lot of bad work. And you're going to find a lot of bad work out there just in general. So there's issues with just buying stuff and not having at least a little bit of know-how or what to look for. So that's what I'm trying to help with here, and also give some information about this geometry. So you don't want it too thin. When I was younger, I sanded my neck, like I said at the beginning of this video, sanded it too much because I thought I had little hands. But honestly, I've seen a lot of little hands play a whole lot of badass bass. And so I would not sand a neck too thin. In fact, I encourage my customers, or recommend my customers, don't do that too soon. Play the bass for a while, get some muscle. If they've just started playing, build up some muscle. If it's extremely thick, then that's another story. And this Palatino right here, this level of Chinese bass right here always has a thick neck. And they're actually, we call them baseball bat necks because they're giant. And they're very thick. This one actually is starting to feel pretty nice. I've done some fingerboard work on it, and this one happens to be a reasonable playing neck. The thing about these basses is they're very inconsistent in that regard, and one bass to the next bass to the next bass are going to have all these different neck geometries. So, stuff out there for sale, yeah, that's, a $400 or $500 bass on Craigslist if it plays great, or Facebook or whatever. But to make it play great is a different story. So it kind of depends on how much of a beater you want. But when this fingerboard is done later today, it's going to slap like a dream, because my customer is playing Mexican regional on it, and it's just the nicest sounding Toloche. But real quick, I want to show you a K bass that has a too thin neck, and we'll talk about that. So this K bass, which is also on the market, does play quite well, but it does have a rather thin neck. The neck has been sanded and the lacquer has been removed. It did have a break years ago. There again, somebody repaired it with, it's not the most attractive repair, but it is solid, and it's been sanded and partially, like I said earlier in the video, also to kind of smooth some of that out, but it has left it a little bit on the thin side. So this would be about as thin as I would want to go with a K bass neck. The thing is, with these basses back in the day when they were new, they were playing gut strings, which were twice as thick as the strings we play today. Modern metal strings are 2 to 2.5, gut strings were 2 times to 2.5 times thicker. So that actually added thickness right here, that front to back. When you press the string down, you've got another 3 millimeters or so under your finger, so it made these feel a little thicker. Plus the strings were lighter tension, the gut strings. So things to think about with your necks: removing the lacquer carefully. Happy to do that for you. Give me a call, Pizza Upright Bass Shop. 777-7027, area code 503. Look me up online, check out my website. But yeah, things to watch out for when you're shopping, when you get a bass, things to consider about the neck. Have a great weekend. All right, see you later.